I wanted to do a video on the hidden cost of masking autism. Masking autism is basically when you cover up all your autistic traits in order to fit in, be accepted, and feel some sort of connection to the world and the people in it. Research links masking to poor mental health, and it also links it, unfortunately, to an increased risk of suicidality. This breaks my heart, but research also suggested the average lifespan of an autistic person in comparison to a neurotypical person is 58, and that is largely to do with suicide. Autistic people spend their entire life suffering, and that is why this conversation about unmasking is so important. I think that what ends up happening is two survival responses are going off. One of the survival responses is to feel connection and to fit in and to blend in. And that is one of the survival responses that is often exchanged, unfortunately, by many autistic people in its exchange for their ability to be themselves and be connected to their sense of self and have their own identity and feel a sense of comfortability within their sense of self. I can say with 100% certainty, as a therapist, one of the things that I often see is crucial both to my neurodivergent but also my neurotypical clients is that when you give up and exchange your sense of self in exchange for connection with another person, it hugely impacts your mental health. It impacts your mental health because you are not exchangeable. You are you, and that is the one guarantee in this life. Like, you are born who you are, and you are meant to live being yourself. You are not meant to live being a carbon copy of somebody else. But autistic people, unfortunately, are encouraged to do this. They might be encouraged by parents. I'm not saying that's necessarily the case, but it could be. They're often encouraged by their peers and the people around them that they should act in a certain way in order to be accepted. And the more that they do that, they will probably be praised by even not necessarily direct praise, but the fact that they are not being noticed as being different and that being seen as a bad thing. And schools often encourage this too. Unfortunately, it has to be said that schools do have to answer for the fact that the more neurotypical you act, the more likely you are to be praised, and the more neurodivergent you may act and your differences, the more that you lean into them or present them or show that you are experiencing them, the more that that might result in some element of conditioning being put in place. The problem with masking is I think that anybody who is in this arena and talking about this in particular will understand that it's bad, but I think that we also have to highlight the fact that the reason why people do it. They do it because it helps them feel a sense of blending in and not being ostracized. Again, when we reduce it right down to the human form, the part of our brain, the limbic part of our brain, requires connection, and it requires true connection, authentic connection, which means me showing up wholly, connecting with somebody else who's showing up wholly, and there's no facades, there's no sort of lies, there's no sort of me pretending to be something else, you pretending to be something else, because ultimately we wouldn't be really truly connecting. However, what ends up happening in a world like the one that we live in, if me showing up the way that I actually am doesn't immediately mean I'm having connection, if anything, I'm having the opposite effect happen, I'm going to start to want to see and observe how other people connect and become more of that. So this is the reason why people start to mask. And I touched on it before, but often masking results in a lot of unjustified praise. The thing that I often say about being autistic is that their difference, and however that is, however that looks, because it's a wide spectrum, is not fundamentally wrong. And I think that is the one thing that I would change if I could wave a magic wand, which would be I don't want people to assume that difference, just because it's different, equals bad or wrong, including more so the people who are experiencing that difference. However, moving away from why people do masking and why it becomes appealing to people, in particular, research suggests that it's a lot more females than males, but I can fundamentally say from my experience that I've seen many males do this too, especially anybody who has autism where there isn't an intellectual disability coupled with it, and they understand, like they can observe that how things work, and even if it might not necessarily come natural to them, they can also see that actually they're all connecting and I'm feeling like I'm over here not connecting because of the way that I am feeling and the way that I guess, experience this. But away from the reasons why it happens is we have to acknowledge why it's so dangerous. The longer somebody masks, the more likely they are to feel all the symptoms of not being able to, one, see and meet their self completely, two, have real authentic connection with people who understand and accept them the way that they are, and three, the increased risk to their mental well-being as a consequence, and they are a lot more likely to suffer with autistic burnout. Your body can only take so much, and when the mental and the emotional pressure gets to a point where it can't tolerate anymore. Obviously, we know of meltdowns, we know of shutdowns, but we also know that chronically experiencing these on a regular basis where you're not able to see yourself or meet your needs as they are authentically, not as I guess you feel comfortable presenting, then burnout is unfortunately inevitable. And burnout further kind of exasperates the things that make it hard to connect in the first place. So it could be that your capacity is reduced, your ability to mask is reduced, you're physically, mentally, and emotionally completely drained. You feel helpless, you feel powerless, you feel defeated. That self-critical part of the brain becomes so dominant and overbearing that you can't see yourself in a positive light at all. Procrastination is, I guess, worse, as in you experience more of it, and your performance on even a performance that you are maybe able to do, like a day-to-day task, like such as just get up in the morning and brush your teeth, is reduced dramatically. Your ability to empathize and want and also be able to create and maintain any form of connection is reduced again quite significantly, leading to potentially more isolation and also more conflicts, which again has to be highlighted because this is actually avoidable, not in fact by trying to pretend that you don't experience anything, but in fact by understanding yourself and understanding why you are the way that you are, not battling yourself on that, being kind and understanding to that part of yourself so that you don't ever have to push yourself to a place like this, because this requires so much more work than just allowing autistic people to be autistic people and present and experience the world in the way that they do. I think it's also really important to know the impact that it will have on your physical health. I've done another video on this, so please go and watch that, which is about stress and trauma and the impacts that it has on your body and understanding why it works the way that it works. Again, so you can give yourself some level of understanding and knowing it's not a you problem, it's actually just the way that we are wired up. And that's true for everybody, including neurotypical people. But imagine now that not only is your nervous system dysregulated, the stress hormone button is switched on and you are struggling to turn it off. But now imagine that the dial is up, because that is unfortunately what a lot of autistic people experience. They experience chronic stress, chronic trauma, And again, that's probably a video for another time because that is a subject all in itself. The reason why autism and trauma often compound together, and it's likely that if you are autistic, you have definitely experienced trauma. More trauma just because of the way that the world is set up, but also because of your experiences. So that stress hormone, like I said, is that cortisol. That stress hormone is just switched on permanently and you're struggling to turn it off. And your emotional body and the stresses and the traumas that you've experienced are stored in the body. So there's lots of dysregulation there. But in general, your body is just, your nervous system is just dysregulated. And I go into more detail in the other video. But when the nervous system is dysregulated, that results in you becoming physically unwell. None of this sounds fun. And I don't want this for anybody. But I give you the timeline of how this works because it's so important for you to understand that I don't want that for myself. The cost of masking is far too great, even if in the moment it feels beneficial. But more importantly, I want anybody who's listening to this who may encourage because they have been taught to, not because they understand all this that I've just said, but they might encourage you, or they might encourage anybody who is different or neurodivergent to act neurotypical or act differently, to minimize themselves, and for the comfort of them to take a moment and wonder whether this is what you want. Because I imagine that if you have any humanity and any sort of kindness inside of you, that is not what you want for these people. And my fellow autistic people, I ask you this. We should not be making people feel more comfortable around us when they are making us feel uncomfortable in being ourselves. But every message I imagine you've received has told you the opposite. We should be praised and we should be encouraged to act in a way that doesn't make anybody else uncomfortable around us. But it's okay that you feel uncomfortable. That's not fair. And I know we all have a great sense of justice and fairness. So maybe we should lean more into that in this instance when it comes to unmasking. I hope this has been helpful. Anybody who is on their late diagnosis journey, I don't mean to plug, but I do have a book. I will input it here and I'll put a link down below. I do have a book which is journal prompts that helps you understand your autistic experience personally, and it will help the process of you beginning to unmask by knowing yourself better and knowing where you might be, I guess, acting in a way where you're covering up your authentic self. I think that we should all question, and I do the same thing because I am not free from mistakes, but I think we should all question our ableistic views and wonder whether, in an open way and not a judgmental way, are we further embedding an ableistic society by telling autistic people that the right experience is acting anything but autistic? I hope this has been interesting and thought-provoking. Please do let me know your thoughts and I'll speak to you soon.